Namaste and welcome to another episode of Insightful Conversations at Auro Bharati, a forum where we talk to individuals working in various domains of activity who through their own work in their own ways are giving new forms and new expressions to the eternal and timeless spirit of India. And in that light, today we have with us a wonderful guest, Saiswaroopa Iyer ji with us. She is an author, a creative writer, a curator, and the title that we have for this session is Reimagining Tales from Puranas and Itihasas, a writer's journey of engaging with epic heroines. So with this theme, let me briefly introduce our guest today. Saiswaroopa is an alumnus of Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, and also an investment professional who then turned writer. And we'll find out what made her give up that career and turn to writing. She's the best-selling author of several novels and all based on legendary female protagonists from our ancient Indic literature. She's also curated an anthology of short stories based on the Mahabharata battle, which has been published by Bloomsbury. And she's a curator at Indic Academy and also has a certificate in Puranas, Puranic studies from Oxford School of Hindu Studies. So we have lots of questions for you, Saiswaroopa, based on your novels, based on your writing career. So hopefully through the conversation, we'll know more about you as well as the work that you are doing. So welcome to Sri Aurobindo Society, to Auro Bharati.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Velu, for that very warm welcome. I have been a fan of Maharshi Aurobindo ji. My mother, who is a literature major, always speaks so highly about his Savitri, and it feels so great to be associated with you all today. I'm looking forward for this conversation.
Wonderful. And I'm just so happy that this conversation is happening in, for our February issue of Renaissance, which is Mother's birthday. The day this is being released is Mother's birthday, a very special day. So, and you as a writer who's been writing on this aspect of Shakti, the womanhood, the Indian womanhood. So I'm really looking forward to next hour or so to hear more about your journey as a writer. So let me begin with this very first question. What made you give up your profession for which you trained so hard at premier institutions and then take to writing as a full-time career? So if you can just briefly tell us about that.
So I would like to think that what I studied and the early part of my career, which was not related to writing, even that had a great role in leading me to my original calling, the true calling, Belu. So, for example, in my job as an investment professional with a venture capital firm, I used to speak to entrepreneurs morning till evening. Almost every day of the week, I used to speak to somebody who was seeking funding because they want to start a enterprise that solves so and so problem, or that brings out so and so service or product that makes life easy. So it was like speaking to all positive minded people who had their purpose cut out in life, and it was very inspiring to be in their company. And that used to always make me think, what do I want to do that can create an impact, that can make an impact, and that can make my years on this planet worth it. And that often made me go back and think, what am I very passionate about? And I was brought up with Puranic stories, with the stories from Itihasas, with the stories from Upanishads, and they became a very inherent part of my world. It's like I feel kinship with, say, the people of Mahabharata. Rather than, I don't see Mahabharata as a book, I see it as a universe which I enter into whenever I want a break from this world and come back with insights. It's like, in olden times, when we used to, or when our parents used to have some trouble, they used to seek their grandparents' advice. And so Mahabharata is like that grandparent. Veda Vyasa is like that grandfather who always has a ready advice for you, whatever is the problem you face in it, even if you're feeling tired or if you're feeling confused or alone. So Mahabharata has a solution for everything. It's that kind of an inspiration. So that stayed with me, and it grew with me. It made me grow. And I wanted to do something. It was like my calling to render that experience with the Mahabharata. And destiny took us to London, where I had a brief break from my regular career. And that was the time I got associated with a lot of writer communities, because I don't have a formal training in creative writing or even English literature, to be honest. So my mother is a literature major. She is great in a lot of things. She can compare Shakespeare, Bernard Shaw, Jane Austen, and produce those very academic, nicely worded thesis. But I have been a techie turned management turned a lot of things. So I never had a formal training in writing. So there was a lot that I had to learn. And the learning was something, it was infusing life into me. I used to enjoy, and waking up in the morning used to be an enjoyable thing, because I knew that I had a purpose to serve. This also coincided with one very, I would say, a turning point in my life is I had a conversation with my Muslim friend. It was way back in college, early college, high school, early college period, where she very innocently asked me, why do you people worship Krishna with so much love when he has so many women in his life? He has so many wives. And that was the time I told her the story of Narakasura Vadha, as to, why, what made Krishna marry so many women. And it was actually to bring them back to mainstream life. And and this is the reason why, one of the reasons why we love him, rather than just have that respectful, worshipful feeling. We also have a lot of love for him, for this kind of exploits, for these kinds of leelas. And the conversation stayed with me. She went back happy, but something in me started churning, because she being a Muslim, it's still understandable. But many Hindu friends that I had afterwards also had a similar level of, would say, ignorance about our past. And a story started forming in my mind about this whole incident, but from the perspective of one of those women that Krishna rescued. And I never thought at that time that I had a book inside me, but it just kept taking form and growing. And in fact, one of my earliest drafts was in Telugu. I had written some 20-page story and tore it up during college and all. But yes, as I said, the whole career and my experience at my job, everything led me back to this root calling of mine. And I started exploring writing that as a fiction. Then there was a lot of learning about crafting a fictional work, and for us balancing it with the Puranic references and sources. And it was a enjoyable as well as fulfilling process, fulfilling journey.
Good, great. So growing up, you said you kind of you grew up with a lot of Puranic stories and stories from Mahabharata and other Indian literature. So in addition to that, were you also reading more contemporary writers, particularly those that might have inspired you in some way, both as a reader and as a writer?
Yes, actually, it got rekindled when I started reading K.M. Munshiji's Krishnavatara series. That kind of brought back the Krishna in a different way in back to my eyes. Basically it set the ball in motion, saying, it was like some voice inside me saying, I found this book so that I could start writing.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Great.
So yes, and then we also have to thank all the this whole galaxy of writers in the modern era, like Amish Tripathi ji and others, because I used to frequent bookstores a lot ever since my college. Bookstore browsing used to be a big time hobby for me. And every time Hinduism, books with Hindu gods are in one corner shelf called religion where nobody goes. Right. And these writers brought back religion to, it may look like, okay, fiction is like as if you're telling it's not there or something. Critics may have their skepticism, but it's brought back to the place where everybody goes in those bookstores. So that is a revolution that we have to acknowledge. And again, that had an impact on me wanting to pursue it as a career. So that.
Interesting. I remember now that you mentioned K.M. Munshiji. I remember reading this about you. I think in the preface to your first book, Abhaya itself, yes, you mentioned that. And the connection with Sri Aurobindo, K.M. Munshiji's connection, he was a student at Baroda. And in fact, there is, just before K.M. Munshiji, just before the inauguration of the Somnath temple, the official inauguration of that, K.M. Munshiji had written several letters to Sri Aurobindo about this work and about other work. And he talked about that, how I want to dedicate my life to the work of rejuvenating Sanatan Dharma. And so is this is this thinking of mine correct? And Sri Aurobindo had written to him, he asked his scribe to write down a letter for K.M. Munshiji saying, this is the work to be done. So, in that sense, the connection, I remember when I read that in Abhaya, I thought I'll write down an email to you and mention it to you, but I'm glad we have it on record now.
Oh, yes. So nice to know that.
Yeah. I'll send you that exact letter later on.
Definitely.
So yeah, that connection. You're absolutely right. A lot of these writers have sort of brought talking about Hinduism, whether even if there are these questions that would come up in younger people's minds, those questions have also been brought to surface. So a lot of this genre of writing has done that, which is a good thing. But what I find very unique and very significant in your work is the focus on female protagonists. So the woman, the womanhood, the Shakti aspect. So was it like a deliberate decision that you made, or it just happened because you are a woman?
Yes, it happened. Of course, Abhaya happened because of the reason that I just shared. And Avishi is a departure from my comfort zone of Mahabharata. This is a story set in the Rig Veda where this warrior queen that you're seeing behind me, she loses a leg in a battle and is fitted a prosthetic leg by the Ashwini Kumaras. So I happened to discover the story of Avishi when I was researching for Abhaya itself, because when we render a novel, we have to think visually so that the reader has that experience, the rasa anubhuti, right? So one of the scenes for this novel was my heroine Abhaya was a 6 or 7 year old, curious, mischievous, active child, and her father is trying to tell her a story while giving her lunch, and then that story I wanted to be based on a women warrior, female warrior, so that it serves as an inspiration. That's how we teach our children. That's how our parents taught us our past, and that's what I do with my daughter. So so I started, but here the trick was that that warrior woman had to exist in the pre-Mahabharata times. I started searching. Yes, we had Kaikeyi in Ramayana, who was a great warrior, but the narrative takes a turn that you don't want to share with a 6-year-old kid. It doesn't fit the context, right? And then there was Savitri herself, who was a warrior. She meets Satyavan when she's on a hunting expedition or something. That's a lot of Veera Rasa in that, but still it seemed like not that kind of not a story that a 6-year-old would understand and comprehend. So I really wanted a story of adventure. Then I started Googling, and then one of the results showed me a conference document on prosthesis from an Israeli medical university website. There they said, then they had a chapter about history of prosthesis, where they say the world's first mention of prosthesis in world literature is in the Rig Veda, where Queen Vishpala is given a prosthetic leg by the Ashwini Kumaras. And I was mortified because I used to have a lot of pride about my knowledge of Puranas. And I had never heard about her. And even more mortified because I'm finding her on an Israeli website and not on an Indian website, which is why I felt really compelled to explore her story, though it required a lot of departure from my comfort zone and researching into Rigvedic India, which was a lot different and a lot inspiring from, say, the world of Mahabharata. And that's how Avishi happened. And after the whole, it was a very fulfilling journey, but it was a testing journey. It took a lot from me, and I wanted something back in the comfort zone, which is why I came back to the world of Abhaya and started exploring, Mauri, about the aftermath of Narakasura Vadha, and it culminating in the Rajasuya and going beyond Rajasuya. And then Draupadi and Rukmini happened with Rupa publishers coming, and other 3 were previously self-published, but this version is relaunched by Bloomsbury recently. So that's how I would love to explore a male protagonist also sometime soon. It would be a great creative challenge, and I had consciously tried to respect both the masculine and feminine in all my books, because this competition is something which the gender competition that we seem to have today is not natural. It's something that won't sustain, that won't give us anything worth valuing. So there always has to be a cooperation and a sense of complementary dynamics between the masculine and feminine. That's my belief, and that's how I treat my male characters in my stories. So
yes, no, I think you've really addressed this well. You mentioned about finding about this the Queen Vishpala on an Israeli website and the whole research process that you went to. So when you are writing about someone like Draupadi, or about whom so much has already been written, whether it is, more or less accurate portrayal as we find in Mahabharata, or, is it the writer's own imagination, the writer's own reimagination and retelling? So how did you go about choosing the Draupadi that you wanted to portray?
Yes. So yes, when I was approached to write on Draupadi, my first thought itself was like, what can I talk about her? Something that has not already been talked about, because she is the most discussed female protagonist of even Indian English literature in the past half century, and stalwarts, literally literary stalwarts have written about her. What more can somebody like me write? But then I was in the process of wrapping up Mauri draft at that time, and this Mauri had a very sideline view of the Dyuta. where different women react to that news. Different women from the Abhaya universe react to that news of Dyuta and the humiliation and ordeal that Draupadi had to go through. And that made me read and reread the scene from the Mahabharata. And something that kept coming back to me was the skewed nature of the popular adaptation of that scene. Like, actually, Draupadi's role was a game changer there in the Dyuta Sabha. Right? She was dragged in the most unceremonial and the most brutal way, but she walked back like the queen.
Right.
That she was. Yes. Right? And the way, and Vedavyasa has actually given her that stage, the whole incident of, Dushasana attempting to disrobe her, and the saris magically covering her, and some people, some interpretations say it is Krishna, some interpretations say it is Dharma, and it just happens in a maybe matter of moments or minutes, and there are just couple of lines dedicated to that. What the actual story happens is, after that, when she builds that descent, right, in the Sabha itself, where her own husbands are not in a position to talk in her support, she builds that descent. Vikarna supports her, who is the brother of her enemy, supports her. Right. Vidura is always supporting her. Then the rishis in the Sabha, everybody, and the Bhishma, Gandhari finally. So the way the whole descent is built after her entry is something which nobody has given a thought about. And finally, when Dhritarashtra says, "Oh no, I mean, a lot of pain, very painful incident happened. Let us try and forget what has happened. You are the best of my daughter-in-laws, and we Kuruvansh has done a lot of punya in that's why we got you as a daughter-in-law. So tell me, what do you want as a compensation?" And the first boon that she asks from Dhritarashtra is the freedom of Yudhisthira. Right? And just think about the clarity of mind that she should have been having in that moment, where anybody in her place would have been just bursting with anger or rage. But she had the clarity of mind to think that, okay, setting Yudhishthira free is what is needed at the moment. And when he asked for, no, that's a given, I mean, ask for something else, then she says, free my other 4 husbands and their weapons. And then she says, I don't want anything more, because my husbands are free, they have their weapons, they'll do whatever is needful. And then he had to totally annul the game and say, let's just forget this whole stupid incident happened, and you go back to your kingdom, let's live happily. And so just her entrance into that whole series of events brought about so much of a change. Of course, the second game and the Vanavasa is a different topic, but so I felt it is a gross injustice that we are doing to Draupadi when we see her as a victim. She's actually a hero of that scene. Yes, it's sad that her husbands, who actually loved her, they all 5 husbands who loved her dearly could not stand up, but she stood up for them. She saved them. And I thought that should bring out the empress in her, and that is the side that should be explored, which I did. And in fact, when Yudhishthira describes her while wagering her, he starts by saying compassion is her second name. Draupadi, compassion is her second name. And she's the one who puts a full stop to the war, saying when Ashwathama, even after he kills her children, she's the one who pardons him, right? And she's the one who puts the full stop to the war. And there is other side who sees Draupadi as somebody who represents that vengeance, who never. So I think those are those popular image of Draupadi does a gross injustice to Vyasa's Draupadi, and that was my attempt to bring back the real Draupadi, though in a fictional frame. But it's my humble attempt to bring.
And it's a marvelous attempt. Having read that one, I can
Thank you.
totally say that. I mean, I think I just read it through very quickly. It was so engrossing. But again, like, the reason I asked this question is because I had this question in my mind when I started reading it, that what new is she going to tell me that I already haven't read in other portrayals? So yes, really the Empress character, the regalness of her, I mean, I could just visualize her that way. So it's a very wonderful read. And I think what I find really interesting in the way you were describing how you went about figuring out what Draupadi to portray, you have emphasized on this notion of being very conscious of, being very mindful of the kind of reimagination that one should do when working with, sort of like when walking along with these characters, protagonists from our ancient literature. So, as a writer who has now attained, accomplished so much, what would be your suggestion or advice to those who want to go into this genre of creative writing, historical fiction or whatever? I don't want to call it like mythological fiction,
Yes, I know,
but
even I don't like that
just,
word.
this idea of like retelling our old past stories. How would you guide them if someone were to come and say, okay, I want to intern with you or apprentice with you? What would be your guidance for that person?
Again, I don't consider myself that qualified to guide people on the Puranic side, or reimagining the Puranic fiction. But I would say something, if I were to recap my learning of the last 5 to 6 years, and a couple of years before that, I'll start with the don'ts. Don't ever make the mistake of thinking of yourself, the writer, as somebody smarter than Vedavyasa and Valmiki. Their writings have life and they can put us in our place. And I say this with some experience, some part of self experience, and largely by knowing some things about writers who tend to think that way, who tend to think that the ancient past is very regressive, and I'm giving a voice to Draupadi,
Yes.
That's the most like as if she lacked a voice in the Vyasas, this one. So the minute you think I am giving a voice to somebody who is sidelined by history, that is the most arrogant assumption that one can do. And it's almost asuric. It seems almost asuric to me, because you have this illusion of being strong, illusion of being in a false seat of power, by thinking that you are somebody who are giving who's giving that platform, and that was denied to this character till millennia, and you are bringing her back to light. And that whole that's a vicious cycle, that of course may give the writer what do you say, a momentary moment of fame and a moment of platform, and maybe some awards by vested interests and all that. But I think the after effects are not going to be something that we like. And writing and living the Puranas is a whole journey that we want to savor and live every moment. So always it's Vedavyasa and Valmiki and all the rishis who have contributed to this one, always keep them on a pedestal, and our imagination will bloom better when we have that Shraddha. So that's my first piece of advice. Second piece of advice is to read as much of source literature as you can. Maybe skip English and go to your mother tongue translations. If you know Sanskrit, nothing better than that. But if we don't know Sanskrit, I don't know Sanskrit, though I can make out meanings of a few words, I cannot string them and make sense of a sentence. So better rely on Indic translations. For me, it's Telugu, probably Hindi, Kannada, Tamil, Marathi, whatever is your, because the loss of context is minimal there. When Sanskrit is translated into an Indic language, the loss of context is minimal, and the attention goes to those parts that the poet has beautifully depicted there. And do we have time? I would like to shed light on one experience of reading a source literature that I...
Absolutely. In
Yes.
fact, I wanted to ask you about you having read so much in Telugu literature. So please share with us.
Sure. Not from Telugu literature, but this is from Valmiki Ramayana itself.
Okay.
So that was one point of time where I used to have a lot of this feminist anger on Sri Rama, thinking about this Agni Pravesham and all that, Agni Pariksha and all that. And I happened to attend this book launch by one very popular author. I don't want to take names here. It was a feminist narrative about Sita, and a lot of angry women came up on stage and started talking a lot of things which are totally unrelated to Ramayana. And I was watching them, something in me started, blaring that red light saying, whatever anger that I have, I don't want to end up like one of them. It's all... it's like you just cannot show the anger maybe you have on your husband or in-laws on Sri Rama. You didn't know that anything, right? So that was one kind of a turning point where I thought, okay, let me not take this way, whatever it takes, and let me go and explore back Ramayana, especially this particular incident. And then I started reading the shloka, the Pratipadartha, they call that, the word-to-word meaning, and then the translation from... There is a beautiful online source called valmikiramayana.net. I went back to that. That's the easiest source available. So
yeah, absolutely.
So that whole chapter, Rama begins the conversation calling Sita as Bhadra. And what is the meaning of Bhadra? Bhadra means pure. Bhadra means beautiful. Bhadra means fortunate. And it has everything, it's everything auspicious. Right? That is something which stayed. Okay. You can't begin a conversation by calling somebody with a lot of respectful, with that respectful note, and then say that, okay, I doubt you,
Abandon you. Right. Yeah.
Yes. And then there is another metaphor, very beautiful metaphor that Valmiki uses. He says, after that, he says, okay, I cannot accept you because you are like light in front of a blind man. And that's such a striking metaphor. So he compared her to the light and himself to a blind man. Right? Because there, it just struck me that Sita was representing that something which is not affected, the knowledge. What is not affected is Atma. What is not affected is knowledge. When whatever happens, whatever tumult and whatever tragedy or anything that strikes, it's the knowledge and Atma that remain unaffected. And what is blind is the physical aspect of us. So it is Rama's journey to find that Sita, and whole of Ramayana has been Rama's journey. At least the last half of Ramayana is Rama's journey to get back Sita. So there is a whole, so there was this whole wave of emotions within me, and it just struck me that each word of Ramayana means something, and we just cannot look at it from that 30,000 feet above and then draw our own 20th century conclusions about feminism, patriarchy, oppression, and the whole imported dictionary from the West is being juxtaposed on the Ramayana. That's not the way we understand the whole. And still, I cannot say Ramayana is my comfort field. It's just like 2 pages of reading Ramayana gave me this insight. So just imagine reading the whole corpus in in the source literature, experiencing the words. that is something, I think it's very enriching. If you are a writer exploring retelling, do try and enjoy reading that original poetry with us in that original context. That's a beautiful experience. And always try and visualize people, form a relationship with them, think of yourself as walking with them, watching those events happen, unfold, and the way they unfold, they may not unfold in front of our eyes like the way they unfolded in front of Vyasas. And one thing, creative liberty, I think we are taking liberties, which means that which kind of implies that Vyasa had a lot of restrictions, and we are taking liberties out of the line. It's actually we who are limiting ourselves. We are not able to see the extent and scope what Vedavyasa saw. We have a limited scope of mind. It's fine. I mean, because we are defined by our desha, kala, paristhiti, our situation, our times, our contemporary issues. We are defined by them, and we seek solutions from the ancient. That is totally fine. It's too much to expect us to understand Vyasa from that parlance. But again, it's always good to remember that we are. We are in that limited frame of reference, and Vyasa has that unlimited liberty, actually speaking. So yes, it is fine. I don't take it offensively when somebody portrays gods as humans. It's not, because gods are not they are not magicians who are ready to conjure up mahimas and mayas for our sake. So we see them, if I meet Krishna, if Krishna blesses me with a manifestation, like he tests his devotees, he would probably come to me as a human being, and I wouldn't recognize even 100th of or a millionth of his divinity. But in that limited perspective, I write, right? Not like, showing him conjuring up stuff. So yes, it's good to imagine, gods as humans, to give that connection, but not from a assumption of putting them down. So I think I have given a lecture.
No. I just noted down a few points here because I think you have really touched upon something very critical here. The idea of limitation. Okay, I'll come to this limitation part afterwards. But the very last thing you said about God can come as human, but not impose our human limitations on the god or gods, whatever, on the divinity. Not to put them down to our level, not to put our emotions onto that.
Yes. So imagining them as humans is a way to elevate ourselves to their state, not.
Yes. Right. So that direction has to be kept in mind.
Yes.
And also, I think another thing you said, something very beautiful, was the idea of seeing. So we are seeing in that very limited, desh, kal, paristhiti, the whatever context of life, whatever experience of life we've had. And when somebody like Vedvyasa or Valmiki or any of the other rishis were writing, they had that trikal drishti, so they are seeing beyond their context. Precisely. And that's why those stories are still highly, highly relevant today and will be so for tomorrow. So what you are pointing out, I think here is the idea of growing in one's own consciousness, vasening, like widening our own consciousness if one wants to really take up this work of kind of writing about these characters. So the vaster one can see, the truer the portrayal can be. This is what I'm understanding, I think.
Yes, and I had my own experience of balancing the karma, bhakti, jnana, my own humble experience, nothing to brag about. But before Abhaya, Velu, I used to have not so favorable opinion on bhakti. I used to value jnana highly, and I used to value karma because you do seva, you do service, you are doing something useful to others. Jnana, yes, you are improving yourself. And what use is bhakti if it's just totally useless to yourself and to others, kind of a feeling. And it's difficult to exactly pinpoint how and where of it, but there are always moments where jnana and bhakti, the jnana and karma, they are important, but they are finite. As humans, the connection to infinite is made only through bhakti. And what we can process, learn is also finite as human beings. What we can do is also finite, and bhakti is the only way to connect to infinity, the infinite nature of divinity. So, and it doesn't contradict, they don't contradict each other. Yeah. And most beautifully put quotation about them was by Chakravarti Rajagopalachari ji, where he says, karma is for the karmendriyas, the limbs. They should always be engaged in karma, and the brain should always be engaged in taking knowledge and jnana, and the heart should be always engaged in bhakti. So it's possible to braid all the three together, and only when we are able to braid those three together, I think there is progress.
Yes. And it's so wonderful that you brought this word progress. Our theme for the February issue of Renaissance is progress. So through this year of 150th birth anniversary of Sri Aurobindo, at Renaissance we have taken 12 attributes that the mother said are necessary for the full manifestation of the Divine Mother's work. So the February theme is progress. So you've just touched upon very significant word right there. And another term that you said in your previous response, you talked about having Shraddha, approaching the work with Shraddha, with bhakti, with love, and not with a sense of arrogance. I think that's, again, something that is really important for the new generation of writers who want to go into this line of work. And so I want to ask you now, as I heard you, and as I've kind of felt about you just reading some of your work, for you, writing is now your sadhana, isn't it?
In a way, yes.
Yeah. So how has this, immersing yourself in the Puranic literature, in whether it is in your own mother tongue or whatever little Sanskrit, or even like the more English contemporary writings, how has that shaped you as a person? As what's the Saiswaroopa now, say what she was maybe 10, 15 years ago, before you were, before your life was kind of taken over by these heroes and heroines from Puranas. Before you started
to say, but if there's one transformation that I can bet upon, I'd say before writing, I was always chasing a goal. The journey and the goal were totally different. Where we think, yes, after attaining the goal, yes, we are something and we have to work hard. And but writing has, and especially writing this genre of Puranic reimaginations, has made me enjoy the journey as much as the result. So I just look forward for my writing sessions, trying to visualize writing. Then, then there is a process of editing. The professional process is a professional process, that has to go on. But I think I have started appreciating living the journey. Only when we live the journey, I think even the milestones make sense. Otherwise, we are always searching for that elusive happiness. When we don't enjoy the journey, when we don't value the lessons that we learned across the journey, I think even that happiness that we imagine upon the result is also very, very elusive, because goals always keep shifting. That is again progress. Every goal is a milestone towards a bigger goal. So and we don't know what is the final goal, when we will reach it, and what impact it would create is all like really unknown to us right in at the moment. So what we can do is actually appreciate the journey, and that's the biggest transformation that writing reimagined stories has got me into. And yes, it has made me a humbler person as a person, and it has made me a more open-minded, if I can say. I think it has just opened a whole different world, which which helps me make better sense of the world around us.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. So you mentioned words like bhakti and love and shraddha. So I'm just going to build upon that a little bit about your love for Sri Krishna. And see, even when I say Sri Krishna, it's like, somehow he feels a little distant. Love for Krishna. So, you and I think you, at least reading Abhaya, I felt that very strongly. Somehow I don't know, I kept picturing Abhaya as you. So, like, the kind of love Abhaya has for Krishna, it's so palpable, so real. It's not like bookish in any way. It's so, I don't know, just tell us a little bit about how this love for Krishna comes in your writing, or it does it, first of all, and in what way, if it does?
So I think I'll be sharing a lot of trivia now. So my mother was also a dancer and an artist. She used to paint, and she had to give up a lot owing to the directions that life took. But if I had one memory growing up is her paintings of Krishna. Wish I had something to show right now, but there was one painting with Yashoda milking a cow and Krishna asking her for a milk. That was the painting which was incomplete for a long time. She had not finished coloring it. I was born and she was busy with me and trying to support my father by doing a job and all things. That was incomplete, which is why she kept it out within reach so that she could complete. Finally I was around 6 7 8 when she completed coloring that painting, right? So that sketch is somehow we had a very small house, almost a one room studio kind of a house for a long time, and during when I was in primary school. And I remember that was the first thing that I used to see every day when I woke up. So it formed a unspeakable connection between me and Krishna. And in fact, I used to think that Krishna exists in our own time. And probably if I write him a letter, he'll come. He's living in Gokul, Vrindavan or something, and I'm living in Anantapur. So if we go to Vrindavan, maybe we can meet him. Or if I'll write him a letter, he'll come. He'll come and play with me. And so my mother was trying to teach me writing. I was in kindergarten, writing words and framing sentences. And then I told her, okay, I'll write if you teach me how to write a letter to Krishna. Saying, I want to call him to Anantapur at our place. Probably when all my friends are there, so he can play with us also. So I mean that was the childhood me trying to connect to Krishna, when my mother laughed and said, no, it's not like that. And there's a whole life of Krishna that you must know about. And then I started reading Amar Chitra Katha, and there's a beautiful pictorial series by Dreamland called Krishna Leela. And the reading picked up after that, then Mahabharata. And it used to be a part of my obsession to read anything that's related to Krishna. And then I discovered Meera when I was in my pre-teen times, 10 11 pre-teen thing. And I just felt probably I am feeling what Meera felt for Krishna. She is in a different time period from, and she coped with it with bhakti or something. And I thought maybe I can also do something to show my love for him and have a similar journey. Of course, my opinions about Meera and all had a transformation, growing up and learning much more about Indian history and all that. But that stayed with me. And then this incident of conversation with a Muslim girl happened. And so I think Krishna was a part of my life, consciously, subconsciously. He was the guy who I used to complain to about anything that went wrong in my life, whatever that school, primary school, fight with a friend. And then, so he had been a constant companion. I'd like to think he's still my companion. But there is a lot to draw from him. It can be comfort, it can be love, it can be knowledge, it can be a lot of inspiration. You can draw anything from Krishna. Is that infinite source. And yes, currently I'm practicing Sri Vidya, and in that, in the Shat Chakra, we see Lord Krishna as the Lord of Anahata Chakra, and that stands for unconditional love. The way he accepts everybody. Yes, Rukmini is that very determined princess of royal birth. Yes, she's welcome. Gopikas are innocent milkmaids who have just given their everything. Yes, they are welcome. Satyabhama has her own, she is welcome. Pandavas, yes, they are welcome. So that way he represents that unconditional love, and irrespective of what we do, our the glorious part of ourselves and the not so glorious part of ourselves, irrespective of all that, he's somebody with whom we can connect. So that's Krishna to me. So probably I'll never get tired of exploring him from various angles and rasas. And I hope I'm not boring you, Belu.
No. In fact, I'm just framing another question, right? Following up on this. Not at all. Please feel free. I don't know. Were you finished?
Yes, I was.
So, you talked about Krishna and the unconditional love and Krishna's loves, whether it is the Pandavas, Draupadi's, Satyabhama, and then Rukmini. So I want to talk a little bit about this novel of yours, Rukmini. Again, she's one of those heroines, epic protagonists about whom not much has been explored.
Yes.
So what again made you choose? Just because she is another love of Krishna and you want to kind of maybe somehow again, I'll be honest, I haven't read that, but that is something I want to pick up. Abhaya is the Satyabhama aspect, and so this is the Rukmini. So now I want to see what's the connection between Saiswaroopa and this fiery princess Rukmini. So
interesting that you use the term fiery, because that's what Rukmini is. And a lot of popular narratives again about Rukmini, of course, thankfully, she's not as wrongly understood like Draupadi is. But still, we have this, whatever is the very popular imagination is really superficial understanding about Rukmini as well as Satyabhama, if I can say. So I wanted to look at Rukmini from a really Mahabharata gives a great perspective. So from that Mahabharata perspective, I wanted to look at Rukmini. So it starts from a gross and ends in a subtle kind of a realization. So the gross is about her. So understanding Mahabharata's macro world here, the main antagonist of the pre-Rajasuya Mahabharata is Jarasandha. It's not the Kauravas. They're almost nothing for Jarasandha is. So he totally wanted to control the rest of India. He started dominating, especially this area of marital alliances. He's and marriage became a tool for power for him, where he would dominate over King A to give his daughter to Prince B, the son of King B. A and B would treat him as some elder, and then he forces King B to give some favor to King A, and King A is indebted to him. That way, he used to exert his influence, and Rukmini was the first princess who stood up to him, actually, made his attempts a failure by running away with Lord Krishna. So her action had political consequences. Her action had macro consequences. So that's when it's after Rukmini's marriage that other princesses of India started having that courage to run away. And again, half of them ran away with Krishna himself. But still, she was the one who showed that Jarasandha could be stopped.
Yeah.
And only after her marriage to Krishna, then there is Draupadi's Swayamvara to the Pandav, and she marries the Pandavas, and they become a power center. They become that alternative power to Jarasandha, and that is when Krishna could think of supporting the Pandavas on the Rajasuya aspect. Basically, by tearing herself away from Shishupala and allying herself with, I use the word ally here because it has a political, political not from that narrow meaning, but from a broader perspective. By allying herself with Krishna, she also ended up allying Drupada, the Panchalas and Kurus by, otherwise, the next stop, Jarasandha would have tried to influence Draupadi's marriage. He tried to. Right? So the chain of events that she set just by standing up to what she felt was something which goes on unsung, and that is what I tried to portray in Rukmini. Is there's a considerable section of the book dedicated to the pre-marital life of Rukmini, as to how she felt about the life unfolding around her, and how and it's difficult for a girl when her own family is against her, right? And how much ever it is Krishna, you're going going into a marital house without a natal home to fall back upon. That's something hard, right? That's emotionally a very tough decision for every girl. And probably that's the reason why in Telugu households, girls are encouraged to read Rukmini Kalyanam, the episode of Rukmini Kalyanam, before a formal search for a groom begins. Right? So those who can afford, they call pandits and scholars to read out Rukmini Kalyanam from Potana's Andhra Mahabhagavatam. It is a beautiful episode, a beautifully rendered poetry episode. So, and it's a bit of a paradox, right? Conventionally arranged marriage is considered something preferable, and then you are beginning by glorifying a story of elopement.
But I guess that's the beauty of our tradition, the way it makes the mind so plastic and not attached to any rigid convention, that paradox. We learn by living in this paradox. So.
Yes, so I feel Rukmini's story is call to each and every family to find back that harmony. Between whether it's harmony with the daughter's decision or a son's decision or a parent's decision. There has to be that harmony on a family level. It has to be, there has to be that harmonious acceptance of a decision or arrival at a decision. So that's a lesson from Rukmini's life, and then it's not tough. It's not easy to accept co-wife after co-wife coming into your life. At a gross level, it's not. So it had to had she should have had a journey in understanding Krishna even after her marriage, right? So I wanted to explore that, and then the whole Mahabharata and the incidents from Bhagavata from her perspective, and very purposefully and very the biggest gamble I would say I took in my literary career is that I did not include the Tulabhara story in this Rukmini of mine.
Okay.
Because that somehow as a standalone story it's beautiful with its beautiful lessons of the bhakti and gross love and subtle bhakti, and it's as a standalone story it's very beautiful, but from a macro perspective I could not reimagine, I could not see it. And again, Satyabhama is so dear to me, and I could not imagine them as rivals from any perspective. So you will see interesting partnership between Rukmini and Satyabhama in my Rukmini. They because it does to understand and put up with Krishna, it really takes multiple brains and minds, which is why I think Rukmini found strength in her co-wives, not rivalry.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm definitely picking it up.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So just last couple of quick questions. Do you also write in Telugu?
I wish I can. I hope to sometime soon.
Okay. Okay. And what are you working on now?
Now
if you can disclose.
Yeah, I part disclosure. I took a temporary departure from Mahabharata again, and I'm exploring the near history. I would say closer history of 13th to 17th century history of South India.
Okay.
Because this is one place where subaltern has stood up for the civilization and fought against invaders. The actual subaltern, it's not we don't the region stopped taking pride on some lineages, dynasties, royal blood and all that, and each warrior, whatever is his background, took up weapons and started fighting against the invaders to protect this land, and all of them were connected by the spirit of India, which I find is very, very inspirational. Venu. So I just wrapped up a manuscript, a draft about a queen from South India, but I can't disclose much. I also started writing about a male protagonist, Vemareddy is his name, and he existed in that 13th century, that dark period between the Kakatiya Empire and the Vijayanagara Empire. There's almost a 50 years of dark period. It was not dark, it's just that people don't talk about it, because these are the warlords who took up arms and basically made whatever their humble patches of land, they made Turk free. It's totally, it's Lord Shiva in his destroyer form, manifesting through these heroes like Vemareddy, Kapayanayaka, Yachamani Naidu and all. And they were not put down by these great defeats that, and our history is marred with these 1191, this Muhammad of Ghori won over Delhi. Okay, story of India is over. I mean, no, it's as if that's one irreversible incident. Kakatiya Empire fell down to Malik Kafur. Okay, South India is gone. Talikota, Vijayanagara fell. Okay, that's the end of Hindu Empire. But we kept on fighting back again. If there was a empire after empire, it started forming because people never gave up fighting, and people never gave up believing in what has to be protected. That is the clarity that our ancestors had, and all these dark zones of history have to be brought into the light to find those inspiring sections of our history, and that's what I'm trying to do right now.
Wonderful, wonderful. I can really feel how this journey that you've been on for last several years has really, kind of brought you closer to that a sense of India, the essential spirit of India. And that carries over in the way you write and what the reader grasps. So I really wish you all the very best for the new work that you've undertaken. And I'm sure when it's released, we'll know what it is. And thank you so much, Saiswaroopa, for spending this much time with us and talking about your journey as a writer, about how your walk with these great women of India has been, and how you are retelling their stories in a new way, in a new light, uh, kind of still staying true to who they were and yet making them relevant for present generation and future generations. So I really appreciate your times with us, and
Thank
thank you
you.
so
Thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure. Every moment was a pleasure sharing about the whole
much.
journey, Belu. And it's even much more, I consider it a much higher privilege to be interacting with anybody from the Aurobindo fold. Have a lot of respect for the kind of intellectual revolution like the likes of him have brought forth, and he's a very undersung intellectual in the galaxy of modern philosophers of India, I could say. And it's great the work that you are doing. My namaste to everyone there, and
Thank you.
hope
Thank you.
this
And yes,
discussion is useful.
and again, like, one of the common things is again the master reimagining. It's not even reimagining, the master re-seeing of Savitri's legend, what Sri Aurobindo has given to the world. The retold story of Savitri. I mean, both a legend and a symbol, he says. That's the tagline, the byline of Savitri. So, yes. Yes, thank you so much, Sai Swarupa, and wish you all the best.
Thank
Namaste.
you. Wish you all the best.